Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill Notre Dame heading into 2025. It is one of those programs that across the country, I think we all know, is national championship caliber. Now, the frustrating part to me when I look at this Notre Dame team and then I look at how people are talking about this team in the national media is all the attention goes to CJ Carr / the quarterback battle and running back Jeremiah Love. Now, look, make no mistake, those are two massive parts of this Notre Dame team winning a national title in 2025. The frustrating part here is I don't think people understand how complete this roster is heading into 2025. Like, pull up the depth chart, look at these football players and say, hey, find me the holes in this Notre Dame team going into 2025. Well, you can't. And there are so many players on this football team that I feel like don't get enough attention rolling into 2025. And look, I'll put my hand up and say I probably have fallen victim to this as well. Like many of y'all know, we've talked a lot of Notre Dame football over the last couple of weeks and months, and there are some names we're about to talk about that we really haven't mentioned over the last couple of weeks. Still, this episode is dedicated to the players that we need to talk about more rolling into 2025. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, to the Notre Dame fans, I'm sure many of y'all probably feel the same way we do, where it's like, hey, we got some players that deserve a little bit more love. Please let it fly in the comment section in terms of players that the country is sleeping on rolling into 2025. In my opinion, it's like a call your shot. Like, who are the guys that we think kind of break out or are going to be dudes for Notre Dame in 2025? Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, Boubacar, one of our guys, and a guy that I think would be a little bit of a different conversation had he stayed healthy in the 2024 year, because you saw that light turning on. To me, this is one, a player that we should be talking more about. Number two, arguably one of the most important players on this football team rolling into 2025, where I look at it and say Notre Dame probably lacked that elite high caliber edge rusher last year, especially in the playoff run. You look at a guy like Bryce Young, who plenty of people are talking about. Well, Dill, on the other side, you have Boubacar Traore, who I think has the potential to work his way into a top 50 NFL draft pick during the 2025 season.
And I think just right now, a little bit further along from an athletic standpoint than Bryce Young. And Bryce Young's got like those traits that certainly are eye-popping.
Yeah.
And this is not to say like he may not just explode onto the scene and really
I think
start
he will.
dominating, because you saw some flashes. Like in that Georgia game, you saw some real difference-making ability, that length, that size. Again, he's probably got to get a little bit more fluid, a little bit more explosive. You talk about fluidity and explosiveness, Boubacar Traore, like he has it right now. I think he's primed to really come in and give Notre Dame that real guy that you just fear game in, game out, play in, play out on the edge against your tackles.
The fun conversation is like, what if Boubacar and Bryce Young put it together? Like that was the missing. That was an elite defense we saw in 2024. Like, and then you're talking about like another level to this Notre Dame defense in the 2025 year if one or both put it together. And I think Boubacar is like the perfect example of why it's working for Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. Like, the player development has been elite. This was a kid coming out of high school, freaky athletic profile, like 80-inch wing, a guy that hadn't played a ton of football because in his sophomore year was pandemic. His junior year had a season-ending injury. And so he was a really raw, freaky dude that you would knew kind of needed some time. Man, if him going into year 3 puts it together, it's another level for this Notre Dame defense, and a guy that I have a feeling we're all going to be talking a lot more about in the middle of October. Deal number 2, and this is not flashy. And look, I ain't going to get up here and say the same thing I said about Boubacar. Like, I don't think Jared Dawson has a chance to be a top 50 NFL draft pick. He's arguably one of the most important transfer portal additions Notre Dame made. You know, you're looking to replace some really good football players in the middle of that defensive line. And Dill, Marcus Freeman had kind of the same approach that Sharon Moore had at Michigan. And we're Michigan fans. It's, all right, we lose some really good football players. How do we try to replace that production? Let's throw bodies at it. Let's get a deeper unit than we were in 2024. Jared Dawson comes in, can play the nose, can play the 3-tech, really good against the run, gives you some pass rush juice. Notre Dame's got to find some replacement to the production they're going to lose at this position going into 2025. And from what we saw from Jared Dawson in that spring game, Dill, I think they might have hit on him going into 2025.
And they also need a little bit more size and guys who I think
Agreed.
you look at what they were playing with Georgia and Penn State and even
Yeah.
Ohio State. Like they were giving up a lot of rushing yards, especially against Penn State and Ohio State. I think both went for over 200 yards. It's really hard to win games when you're giving up that many yards on the ground. And you just look like a Gabriel Rubio, Heinisch, like those guys. Like again, they have their moments, and I think Rubio is a solid rotational depth piece. But they were playing a lot. Heinisch is probably not a first and second down guy. I mean, just not a particularly big defensive tackle.
Yeah.
You look at bringing in Jared Dawson. You look at a guy like Sean Sevillano, I think, coming up as a younger guy. Like, you need those guys to kind of come in and fill those roles and be able to be tough in the way that, like, Riley Mills was. Because when Riley Mills went down, you just didn't have the same ability to stop the run.
And it's going to – I mean, you look at this linebacker room and say this linebacker room is freaking awesome. It's elite. It's one of the best back rooms in the country. What's the best way we can put our linebackers in position to be really impactful? Go get a big fire hydrant in the middle of your defensive line that plays with low pads, that can eat up double teams, and allow your linebackers to
And
play.
I think he's got a little bit more juice than just that. I know that's part of his game is to give you like just that tough. That's what I thought from him coming over from Louisville. That's what I thought his game was. And then I watched the spring game. I mean, he's getting in the backfield, has a really nice, quick first step. So I wonder if Notre Dame's going to get something out of him that Louisville didn't exactly, because he was good at Louisville. I'm not trying to say he was like a bad player. I thought he was underrated, but he was just a good, solid D tackle. And that's like, I don't want to like put my nose up at that because it's hard to find. A lot of teams are struggling with it. I do wonder if there's like a second gear that spring game made me think he has that Notre Dame might be able to
look. If there's a program that can find this, Notre Dame. You know what I mean? Like they seemingly do this with a lot of players. This is a kind of body that Notre Dame didn't have last year a ton, and you felt like they kind of needed at certain points, especially when you talk about college football playoff run. I think that was the goal for Notre Dame as they attacked the portals. Like, we don't need 20 guys like some other programs do because we recruit, we develop, and we retain. How can we find those 8 to 10 players to come in and get us over the hump? Jared Dawson's one of those guys, and it's not super flashy, but he's going to have to play a lot of football, and they're going to need good football out of him if Notre Dame wants to be national championship caliber football team. Number 3, Dill, and let me just cook real quick on Anthony Knapp. Look, I go back and watch Anthony Knapp as a true freshman and say, one, it's freaking insane that he had to start as a freshman and did incredibly well, like way exceeded my expectations. This kid coming out of high school was 270. And all of a sudden you're throwing him out there week 1 on the road, night game, College Station against legitimate NFL dudes. And look, he got his tail whipped a little bit at times, right? You could tell he was a freshman at moments in the 2024 year. This is what fires me up the most. Is this staff clearly loves Anthony Knapp and think he can be a stud over the next couple of years, because if they didn't, they would have put Charles Jagasaw back at tackle. I'm personally a little bit stunned that Charles Jagasaw is staying on the inside and Anthony Knapp staying at tackle. But if I'm going to read the actions of this program, and the actions of keeping Jagasaw at guard and keeping Knapp at tackle are telling me they believe in this kid in a big-time way. I'm expecting a massive year 2 jump from Anthony Knapp in 2025.
You said it, and it is a bit of a projection right now because as a pure pass protector, probably not good enough last year. One thing he always had was the run game. I mean, he's always really tough there, really physical, good athlete, can get up to linebackers. But you said it. I mean, if they're not going to put Charles Jagasaw, who I think is almost like, I mean, he came out of high school as that guy. You were thinking like, oh, this is the future left tackle for Notre Dame. Bookmark it, put it in the books, if you will. Like, if they're not going to move him, Anthony Knapp must be playing at a pretty high level, because Charles Jagasaw was playing at a pretty high level against Ohio State, I thought, for coming off that injury.
I agree, and you kind of saw them do it with Joe Alt a couple years ago, like find a freshman and just ride him. It could be like that with Anthony Knapp as well. You're going to need him to step up more in pass protection It's not – look, Notre Dame's not going to all of a sudden just stop running the football. Like when you have an offensive line like that and you have a running back like that, you're going to ride the run game. But you are probably going to look to specifically push the ball down the field a little bit more, which you need your tackles to hold up and pass, bro. Got to be a big storyline, and I think
You're just too good at wide receiver, and if CJ Carr is in fact the guy, he is too talented to have him playing like Riley Leonard. Like you need
agreed.
to activate that downfield passing attack because they have the talent now around them to really do that.
Jalen Sneed, he's like my guy, man. The consistent, steady improvement, as my father likes to say. Jalen Sneed, the light turned on for him, in my opinion, in the 2024 year. Now, a lot of the national media went to like a true freshman, Kingston Villian-Musa, went to a guy like Jack Kaiser, Drake Bowen. Jalen Sneed has emerged as this defensive chess piece, defensive weapon for Notre Dame. And at times, it's such a benefit to have a kid like Jalen Sneed that, look, he's really good in coverage, like almost gives you that nickel coverage ability, but also like off-ball linebacker ability and run support. Ton of juice as a pass rusher coming off the edge, can spy the quarterback. Marcus Freeman got to work with Jalen Sneed, and I look at it going into 2025 and say, I don't know if he's going to be like an all-down starter at off-ball linebacker because I think you kind of have your guys with Bowen and Kingston. But man, they're gonna continue to figure out a way to use him. Going into 2025, he's another one of those guys that has the chance to be just a difference maker, negative play creator for this Notre Dame defense.
And that is the big thing, just being able to get him in situations to make plays because he was doing that, especially as a pass rusher. And that, again, like you need those. You need to be able to generate them. Ohio State game, like you just didn't do it enough. You didn't make those difference-making plays. Like Jalen Sneed's a guy. Again, we just talked about Boubacar and Bryce Young. Certainly need more from them, probably. But Jalen Sneed's going to be one of those guys who I think from that linebacker rover spot that he likes to play can really get after it and make some things happen.
Totally agree. We got two more to talk about. Will Pauling, he's the kind of our guy, if we're being honest. Loved him at Wisconsin. Was like the wide receiver one, had 109 targets in 2023. Would have been a heck of a lot more productive had he had better quarterback play up in Madison. Here's the thing. Love this get because you're adding a veteran, experienced slot wide receiver that knows how to find space, that knows how to create separation, and you're plugging me in an offense with a young quarterback in CJ Carr, which I think is going to be a massive benefit for Will Pauling. Now, here's the conversation, though. Will Pauling likes to work from the slot, as does your best wide receiver, Jaden Greathouse. This kind of just highlights like the reason I'm so high in Notre Dame here. Like over the last couple of years, I didn't think Notre Dame had good enough pass catchers. Now all of a sudden we're rolling into 2025 and saying, how do you even get all these good pass catchers on the field at the same time? Great spot to be in if you're Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock. I'm fascinated to see the role that Will Pauling plays because they wouldn't have gotten him from the portal if they didn't have a plan to how to use him in the 2025 year. He's going to be a massive asset for CJ Carr at times in the 2025 season.
And the one thing I'm excited about is he really probably isn't a number one wide receiver. That's what he was doing at Wisconsin. He
Agreed.
was in both 24 and in 23. Their guy, I feel like defenses kind of plan to stop him because he was the only real weapon I think would have struck fear in any team across the country, especially in 23 when he was really lighting it up. I'd say I think him going to that third or fourth wide receiver role, I think can really unlock something. Because again, I don't know that I love him if you can focus on him and you can put your Denzel Burke or your top number one corner on him. I just don't know that that's his game to beat that guy like a drum and be really consistent. But I think him as like a third or fourth guy on a really good team, I think can be a real weapon.
I wonder if you see a little bit more. I mean, you're definitely going to see, I think, a little bit more 11%. I wonder how many times you see some four wide receiver sets from Notre Dame in 22 because you have so many guys. Like in the past, you barely had three wide receivers that you loved. Now, especially considering like Micah Gilbert or Cam Williams, you have so many dudes and you have the quarterback that can get them the football. Again, I think the two storylines for Notre Dame, in my opinion, can you get elite caliber edge rusher production from guys like Boubacar and guys like Bryce Young? And can these wide receivers be as good as I think they can be and kind of get Notre Dame over the hump? We could have gone on and on, Bill. I mean, you could have named every single guy in the running back room if you wanted to. You talk about underrated. Everyone wants to talk about Jeremiah Love. They got 3 or 4 guys that would be starting on a lot of football teams across the country in that room. Notre Dame's built a roster that's deep, that's complete, and they got a lot more players than just the quarterbacks and Jeremiah Love. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. To the Notre Dame fans, who we sleeping on? Who's the national media sleeping on? Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.